Remember we talked about competitive negotiations, right? You know, you want, especially if you're intelligent, right? And if you are a motivated person, right? You want to do well at work, right? It's like a challenge for you, right? You want to compete and you want to be like, I want to be the best person in my department, or I want the company to notice that I do great work, right? So the problem is that when your bosses are not very intelligent, or when your bosses are maybe have problems, or they're not very responsive, right? Or they're not very responsible, that basically is a roadblock. It's an obstacle, right? It's an obstacle to your success. An obstacle is something that's in your way, right? It's stopping you from achieving something. It's an obstacle to your success, right? So, but we come back to, for instance, like over here, right, we come back to the old, what I said in the beginning, right? That nothing is permanent. Everything is temporary, right? Everything changes after a while. So, a lot of it is, how do you deal with these situations when you know that everything is temporary? So, in the short term, there's a couple of really important things, right? I'm going to start with this. It's always business, never personal. When you get upset about something, you're taking it personally, right? You're saying that I feel hurt, or I feel angry, or I feel happy. Those are very personal things, right? But you have to separate in your mind, right? You have to separate. This is my job, right? This is my job. This is just what I do. It's always business. It's simply formal. Business means it's just my job, right? It's just my job. It's always business. I'm not going to let this become personal, because it's not worth it, right? It's beyond my control. I can't do anything about it. So I have to be patient. I have to remember that it's just my job. That's one thing, right? And the other idea, wait, let me just see if I remember this. There's a couple of quotes that I really like this quote, because it's really like, it really tells you a lot about how people, and here's the other thing, right? Keep your eyes on the prize. Eyes on the prize. So a prize is something that you get, right? Let's say if you publish the report, right? Let's say then that's your prize, the fact that you wrote this report, right? So let's say before you publish the report, right, you have to send it to your boss, right? And your boss might have the most stupid suggestions, right? But if you're able to just be like, okay, well, boss, I don't think this is a good idea because of this reason, that reason, and this reason, why don't we just keep the report as it is? If you're able to get past that, right, then you get the prize. He gets the credit too, but the reality is that you get the prize too. You guys have the same goal. So even though it's difficult to work with these people a lot of times, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because you have to remember that. When you keep your eyes on the prize, you remember that he might be an idiot, but we have the same goals. So I need to work with him, right? It's kind of like I really need to work with him. It's important for me to keep these two things in mind. I'm not going to let it get personal. I'm not going to because I do need him, right? I do need him. That's just the way companies are, right? You have to report to your manager. He has to report to his boss, right? So don't keep it personal. Remember that it's business, and keep your eyes on the prize. Always look forward. Don't just look at the problems, the obstacles that you have here. Think about, where am I trying to get? I'm trying to get this report published to the rest of the company. And if that means I have to send it to my boss, get his recommendations on changing it, and then change it a little bit and then send it out, then I still win in the end. We still get the prize. It means you have to tolerate a little bit more, right? But it means that you still get the prize. So the other thing is, and these are sort of issues that I have. a lot of the people that I have to work with, not just my boss, right, but a lot of his colleagues are still, they're all sort of my bosses, right, because I'm the most junior member. Problem is that they, you know, when people make stupid requests, right, when they have, when they're not very intelligent, right, they're going to say things that are frustrating, right? The most important thing is don't react. This is very, very important. Someone sends you an email, right, that's like really rude. Like, you know, I mean, the worst thing in the world is when you have someone who's, and I work with people like this. There's someone who's like a manager who's pretty stupid, right? Who's kind of worthless. And she's really rude as well. So she'll send these emails that are like really, really rude and angry, right? What's your first response? You just want to call her and like swear at her, right? You just want to be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why would you even say something like that? No, don't react. That's the very first thing to remember. Because it still looks bad on her. No matter what, at the end of the day, it always looks bad on the person who wrote that email in the first place. It's better, you know, you're sitting at your desk, right? And you get this email. And you feel like saying something to her, right? You're so angry and you're so upset. The best thing to do, close your laptop, get up, let's take a walk. Just go for a walk. Works all the time. Just go for a walk, take 5 minutes, go downstairs, smoke a cigarette, or just, you know, take a walk somewhere. It really helps just take your mind off of it. You can just close your eyes and be like, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to delete that email. I won't even care about it. Or I'll just keep it, and later on, I'll show HR. I'll show my other managers that look at what she's sending to me. And then she's going to get in trouble. Always remember that the person who's patient, the person who doesn't react, think about it this way. If you're walking down the street, right, and if somebody comes and punches you, right, and if you start punching them back, the police don't care who started the fight. You guys are both going to jail because you're fighting in public. But if someone punches you and you're simply able to stop them in time for the police to come, guess what? He attacked you, right? So what have you done? You didn't react, right? It's the same exact thing. In the workplace, you have a lot of situations where there are confrontations. A confrontation is like a fight, an argument. Right? People confront each other. Why did you do this? You know, it's like people have this habit. It's amazing. But a lot of times people get in arguments at work, they'll fight at work, there's confrontations, right? Why? Because people are competitive, right? People want to be acknowledged, people want to be successful at work. So when a confrontation happens, don't react. The very first instinct should be defense. I'm not going to react. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to keep a record of this. And one day I'm going to show her boss that this is how she behaves with us. And she's going to get fired. Or something bad is going to happen to her. Right? So that's something really, really important to remember. And it's really tough. Believe me. And Shinsuke, you know, because you read my Facebook sometimes, right? It's really, really difficult sometimes to be in this situation. You know, every single day you have to tell yourself, especially when there's so many things, like in my workplace, there's a lot of things that are very frustrating. You know, it's not just having to deal with stupid people, right? It's just the environment sometimes can be very negative. So you have to remember that you can't react. You have to tell yourself, I will be patient, and I'm going to endure, because ultimately this is going to make me stronger, right? But that's just one. This is just in the short term, right? The short term can be maybe a couple of months, right? Couple of months, couple of weeks. What's the long-term solution? So in the short term, right? We're saying, be patient. Don't react. Endure. Even ignore, right? Ignore that these things are happening. In the long term, what do you guys think some solutions are? These are the short-term solutions, right? What about the long-term? And so what do you think you can do in the long term to change this situation?
Be more strong.
Yeah, I mean, definitely to be stronger. But one thing you can do, right, is basically tell the proper authorities. Authorities are people who are like the police of the workplace, right? Normally it's every company has HR, human resources, right? That are supposed to protect the people that stay there, especially if your boss is abusive, right? If your boss is not nice to you, if they behave very badly to you, right? If this continues, if this behavior continues, tell the proper authorities, tell HR that this is, bring examples of this is the type of email she sends to us, this is how she reacts to us, and all my coworkers feel the same way, right? HR will address it. They're going to call that person in and basically tell them you either change or we're going to fire you. And they have that ability, right? But what's another, like, example sort of? Well, you know, what's, not an example, but what is another solution? It's pretty obvious. Think about it. Shinsuke?
Just make a chance to talk about with him or with them.
Yeah, so long term, of course, yeah, that's another one that's really important, right? Talk to the person. Right? You know, tell them very nicely that, listen, it's very difficult to work here in this environment, right? So these are two really good ones, but there's another one that's really obvious. What do you think, Shinsuke?
Like, keep a distance from him, like to hide, to go away.
Well, what's the extreme version of going away?
Extreme?
Yeah, like what's the ultimate? So going away is basically like escaping, right?
Yeah, no, like
It's leaving, right?
leaving.
Leaving the company, right? Finding another job, right? Like leaving. Or another position, another job, right? So this is usually if these two things happen, right? And if it still continues, right? Well, you're just unhappy because of it, right? You can just leave. You can find another job and you can just leave. That's like the ultimate last